or so people due to be at the EGM thereabouts, and they need around 140 to vote yes. And certainly, like Friday's meeting would have been a representative of maybe, I think there was 69 people there. So obviously you're talking about a greater number of people at the big event, and I'm not even trying to manage that logistically with the current restrictions, but there is a feeling that they will have enough, because they don't really have any other hand to play as such. And I know, like, Mick Wallace and people are almost suggesting you vote no and put it up to the government and see, are they really prepared to turn off the tap completely and almost permanently, and send the FAI into insolvency and into job losses and all that goes with it? Will they really do that? But I'm not sure if the FAI membership are necessarily in the position at this stage to engage in that kind of brinkmanship, really, given their recent history.
Of the people who spoke to you and said they intended still to vote no, what was the general reason given?
Yeah, I mean, there'd be a couple of reasons. I mean, I think, but it all stems back to an opposition to the 6v6 on the board table, as in that half of the board will be independent directors, going forward, compared to what we have now is 8 and 4. And, a year ago it was 12 and 0, or, sort of a year and a bit ago it was 12 and 0. And their view is that 6v6 is just too much too soon. I know there was one or two people suggesting that what you would do is that of the 6 independent directors, 2 would be non-voting. So you'd still have some kind of majority as such. For this scenario, where I think it's all based around this hypothetical scenario where there is some big decision taking place, where for some reason independent directors feel one way and, people from football constituencies feel the other. And yes, I don't know what radical type of situation you could have that could, polarize people along those lines. I mean,
have the dissenters given one example of this seismic decision that they fear will be railroaded by these nasty independent types? Have they given one specific example of what they have in mind?
No, I don't think so. I did make the point to someone that would you have a problem with the independent directors if it wasn't for the visionary group link, the feeling that some of the independent directors are effectively, they've organised themselves to go in there, which has led to almost the talk of sort of factions developing between them. And they suggest, oh no, if it was 6 independent directors, it'd be fine. But I mean, that's sort of purely hypothetical. And really, like, you wonder the extent to which there's just a fear in some sections about just, I don't know. Like, I can't think of a scenario where you would have a clear split. But I guess if you're talking about something radical like disbanding the council itself, I know they have spoken about changing the structures below. I mean, you could, in theory, have like sort of some dramatic change, not quite constitutional, because that would need to be voted by the membership. But some situation. But it is. I mean, the more you dig into it, it is harder. In my opinion, to be totally, sort of terrified by the prospect of 6 independent directors. I think it's more the optics of how it looks and the sense that you're not in control. You're not in control of your own sport.
I mean, and that may be it. But I mean, look at the job that has been done, and not to tar everyone with the same brush, because I know the likes of Paul Cook, for instance, was critical of John Delaney and did ask questions about finances. But in general, look at the job that was done when football people, were left to their own devices. It has been the ultimate shit show. It has been apocalyptic. And Niamh Brennan, an expert in corporate finance at UCD, was in the Sunday Times yesterday, and she was asked about this 6-6 split, 6 from the football constituencies, 6 independent directors. Is this nuts? Is this a crazy idea? It doesn't seem to be happening in most other situations. And her simple reply was, in most other situations, the taxpayer are not handing over 34 million. Not just handing over 34 million willy-nilly. So what right, really, do these people have to lay down the terms? And like the arrogance of Mick Wallace in many respects to say, like they wouldn't dare not bail us out. Like they bailed out the banks for billions, so they wouldn't have the cheek, they wouldn't have the gall, they wouldn't have the balls, frankly, to flush Irish football down the toilet. So we can just name our terms. And for no other reason than we just want a 8-4 split. You know, no great logic, no specific example of why 6 and 6 is going to be bad for Irish football. It just seems it's about power, it seems about optics, and you know, we can take the taxpayer for what we want. I mean, I'm obviously giving a slightly strong argument there one way, but I have failed to hear. I really have failed to hear over the last week the doomsday scenario that 6 and 6 represents. And I also thought on Wednesday at the press conference when Roy Barrett said that we can change where the deciding vote lays. It doesn't have to be with chairman, for instance. It can go to president. We can move that around. That is not part of the MOU. I thought this 6 thing then would disappear. I thought, well, that's case closed then. This isn't, you know, the 6 independents ultimately will rule the roost. So I don't know. I mean, you look in the past week, I think people are entirely fed up with this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think your view, reflects, you know, in the nicest way possible. Like, I'm not saying you're not a football man, Joe. We're not going on that road again. But it does actually reflect like the outside view in the sense that I think a lot of people feel that way. You sort of wonder what the fuss is about. But I suppose, I mean, the flip side of that, to play devil's advocate on it, that if you've been on council for years and you're a representative, but I mean, like, you know, to move it to 6 on 6, right, you have to take, of the 8 board seats that are there, like they're drawn from various constituencies. So the League of Ireland has 2, schoolboys football is 1. You know, I could go through the list, amateur football and so on. So if you take it down from 8 to 6, like you are losing board representations, you know, for 2 people, which is, you know.
So is it the contention then? Is it the contention then that these 6 independent directors don't care about schoolboy football? You know, is the contention that they're going to come on here and try and do a bad job so that they can be forever painted as one of the 6 directors that ruined Irish football? Like, what do they think the motivation is here? I don't know. I mean, I listened because I was very, you know, there was a fair point. The visionary group. I mean, it seemed like a hell of a coincidence that the 3 involved ended up in the FAI. I thought, well, we've got to look at this here and we've got to see what's going on. And Mark Mashari came out very strongly, but like when we're looking for specifics here, I'm just not seeing them.
I guess the thing about it is that, like, you know, Roy Barrett has faced questions about the process that led to him being one of the independent directors. We have Robert Watt, who's been appointed as well, whose name was going around for some time.
Barrett,
I guess what I'm saying is that the process for appointing the independent directors as well, when questions have been raised about that, I guess you want to know that nominations committee and stuff is working too. You know, like like, if you get what I mean.
No, I do. But on Barrett, isn't it correct that he ultimately was on the list that way? What's the name of the company again that put together the list?
Amra. There's a lot of, listen, there's different versions of stories around this one. Okay. And I don't know, like, I mean, I spoke about this on Saturday, like, and I've made the point throughout it that I think Roy Barrett probably, you know, I think he probably has a lot to bring to the equation here, obviously. I guess what I'm just saying in terms of, like, we've come from a position where the governance was so bad that we have to watch everything very closely now. So if there's any discussion around how things have been handled, then you have to, you can't just turn a blind eye to stuff because you think that these might be better at running it than the people that were there before. But there's obviously, you know, there has still been questions raised about it, but I mean just like the independent directors, how it's operated initially. But I think on the broader concept of it, I do find it hard to get too energized about the 6v6 because to me, if they're a good 12, then they should never ever come down. There should never be a decision that divides along those lines. I just don't know what it is, other than like disbanding, the organization or something. You know, I can't see what would split them in such a way that there would be complete uniformity on either side. Maybe someone can throw out this hypothetical scenario to me, but I would have thought, there's obviously a difficulty in which 2 you lose, and I totally appreciate. I can totally appreciate that, but. You would have thought that that's really in the greater scheme of what's been discussed here and the amounts of money and jobs and so on. It doesn't strike me as especially important in light of the bigger picture. But I'm sure there's people who would scream at me and say that I'm being very disrespectful there to years of service for people. But I'm just not so sure. I'm not so sure that, like, I think comparisons with other sports can be very conveniently called upon. Well, you can list off cricket and hockey and all this, but they haven't had this unprecedented crisis. As you say, the Niamh Brennan example of taxpayers' money. And when the COVID relief was out recently, I mean, the football went for a much bigger piece in the pie. The three big sports went for a bigger piece of the pie than everyone else. So, like, we don't compare ourselves to the smaller associations then. The scrutiny is deserved. And as a result, the special treatment is not exactly out of sync with that.
Well, look, we're obviously both probably leaning towards one side of this. So maybe we need to ask more questions of people who disagree and give them an opportunity to talk about it more. Mark McSharry was on, obviously, OTBAM on Thursday. Maybe we'll look into it more. A final point on all this, is it your general sense now that this thing will get a 2/3 majority at the EGM, or is it very hard to tell?
I think it will, but I mean, at the same time, like if the FEI board people who were asked in the room the other day if they supported the terms, and they and I think in one or two cases, they sort of said they accepted the terms without supporting it. They almost accepted the duty to support it. Like, if they mandate all the sections beneath them as such to vote in a particular way, I mean, I'm careful with my language there, but I guess, everyone there should, of course, be, voting the way they feel. But I guess what I'm saying is, if a lot of people who have concerns but ultimately reach the conclusion that for the greater good, we just have to pass this, even if we're not especially chuffed with aspects of it, then it'll pass comfortably. But, I think you need a coherent plan B to vote no. That's something more than, the government probably won't really do that, will they? If that's all you've got for going the other way, I'm just not so sure. Again, you've earned the right to play that game of risk without drawing widespread derision.
Yes. On the Champions League front, Barcelona and Bayern came through on Saturday evening. They had reasonably comfortable nights against Napoli and Chelsea, and then obviously on Friday, Man City were 2-1 winners over Madrid, 4-2 in aggregate. And Lyon with the surprise of the round, they beat Juventus. Ronaldo doing his level best. We'll talk to James Horncastle later on. So I know on Friday you were otherwise engaged with FAI business. Did you catch any of Saturday's games or Champions League thoughts in general? We have Atalanta PSG first up. We have Leipzig against Atletico. We have Barcelona Bayern on Friday, and we have City Lyon on Saturday.
Yeah, no, see, this whole Watch LOI service has just offered me far too much binge viewing opportunities closer to home, Joe. So I'm watching Finn Harps and Pats in the FAI Cup at the moment as we speak, and Finn Harps are winning, by the way, in terms of that score update. But no, I've seen highlights over the weekend, but to be honest, like, it was pretty depressing to some respects being in the Red Cow on Friday when there was a lot of games going on at home and like worldwide that you could be watching instead of this. Like, it's a weird one, isn't it? Like the final stages of the Champions League, because we haven't faced anything like it before. That it's more like an international tournament. We have all these competitions about, we have all these discussions about, two-legged European ties and even in recent years, like the Champions League the Champions League knockout stages have gone to another level in terms of, they've staggered the games, and the two-legged ties. I mean, the semi-finals last year were absolutely incredible, and yet we're going to go to this now, where it's really elite football, and of course it's going to be very entertaining and watchable. But sometimes these 90-minute, like the end of an international competition, like sometimes negativity can win out in a 90-minute tie. That it almost gets to 60 minutes and it's level, and if you're sort of the underdog team, there's a tendency to almost, let's just hang in there and see where it takes us. Yeah. So the normal analysis that you might do for the ties, like I think it's complicated a bit. Like you can have your ideas about your favourites, and of course Man City, you would fancy them strongly, and I think I heard you mention it earlier. Like Man City and Bayern are the obvious two, really. But I just think that taking away to Portugal, 90-minute ties, like, I just wouldn't be shocked if we have a couple of weird results, to be honest, and it doesn't necessarily run along the lines that we expect, because I just think with no crowd as well, I just think it's going to be a completely different thing. And I'm not sure if it's going to fall along the logic that we think it should fall along.
Yeah, I suspect you may well be right. So Atalanta PSG is on the 12th, as I said, the Wednesday. Atalanta is something of a fairy tale story. PSG, despite all their millions, have had very few matches given the abandonment of the French league. Leipzig have been really good all season. You remember them outclassing Spurs thoroughly, but they have Atletico Madrid. Atletico being precisely the kind of team over 90 minutes who, as you said, can beat the odds, and they did it over 2 legs against Liverpool. Barca, despite beating Napoli comfortably, were good for about 20 minutes in the first half and then fairly iffy for lots of that game. They gave up 18 chances. Messi was Messi. But again, in over 90 minutes, that could be enough to get through against Bayern, who looked awesome. And then City, Lyon, you'd expect City to win, although you would have expected Juventus to beat Lyon as well.
Yeah.
The City thing, City-Madrid was a strange game, just how disappointing Madrid were. I mean, I don't think I've seen Rafael Varane give away such bad goals across the last 10 years, let alone in the same 90 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, the whole strength of Madrid since the break or since the resumption, their defensive record have been very good. And then, it came to a game of, they not the big one, because, they had a job to do to win the league, but it came to that and they lost their way completely defensively. And yeah, it's so as a result, you're trying to figure out how good were City. In many respects, they've done the hard work to take the lead back. But again, it's just these games are going to be a bit different. The one game I probably did see the most of actually was the Barca Napoli game. And you're right, they were so susceptible to mistakes. And I think it was Graham Hunter saying they have no chance basically of winning the Champions League, and you can sort of see why, because Bayern have just been so good attacking wise lately, and when they have everyone available, they just have that ability to really, really punish teams, and you would think Barca just can't be as loose in that type of game. But it's just, I don't know, it's like you say that Atletico, you would think they'd be fine, and I understand. I've heard some people who quite fancy them, but actually sometimes I think the 2-legged ties actually suited them in a weird way. They could use the away goal to their advantage, and actually their one-off record in certain games and finals maybe hasn't been as good. But it's a tough one. I'm going around in circles a bit because I find it hard to really form a really strong opinion about who prevailed. I don't know if you a really fixed view and they will win. This is definitely the team that will do it. You would think City on their day are exceptionally strong, but at times this season they've been so mentally weak at times in 90-minute games.
Yeah.
Is that going to change because Laporte is available? I don't know.
I would lean towards Bayern, to be honest. I think they just are looking awesome and have been for about 6 months now. Before I let you go, the draw was made for the Irish sides from a European point of view. What's the headline news, Dan? What are we looking at?
Well, it is weird, isn't it, that you're talking about the end of a competition this year, and next year's one has already started. It's a bit weird. All the early qualifying rounds this year, again, normally it's 2-legged ties, and there's fans and people talking about going away legs and booking flights, and today is a really exciting day. Whereas now, supporters can't travel at all. They can't go to any of the games. The UEFA have meant them all closed doors, and they're all 1-legged ties. So. Dundalk got the Champions League draw yesterday. Away, they got the away draw against the champions, Slovenia. But because of the green list, that game has to be played in Hungary, which is just so weird. There's going to be in behind closed doors in Budapest next Wednesday, a team from Slovenia and a team from Ireland playing a really, really big match for both sides. That was one of the hardest teams they could have got. And the Dundalk were seeded.
They'll be lining the streets of Hungary on the way to the stadium for the buses.
Yeah, and the Dundalk are seeded, but they haven't really got the type of draw that you think being seeded, you'd be getting a sort of a minnow nation or something, but it doesn't work that way. The 3 Europa teams today, they didn't get Bows of a tough draw away to a team in Hungary associated with Viktor Orban. Bows with their slight refugees welcome T-shirts. There's a social aspect to that game. But football-wise, the 2 best draws are Derry are away to a team from Lithuania who don't seem to be that great. Okay. And Shamrock Rovers in particular, who I think will do well in Europe because of the players they have. They're at home to a team from Finland. I think they'll be fancied to go through. And Rovers are well, and they've won 7 out of 7 games in the league this year. And if they can do well in Europe this year as well, they'd have a chance of being seeded next year when they start off in the Champions League if they win it. So there's a lot going on, but it's just flat because it's people can't go to these games. It's like everything now at the moment. But I think at the early stage, it's possibly even more bizarre because you're going to have these sort of small, low-profile games being moved to different locations around Europe. Yet the stakes for these clubs are like, it could be your turnover in a year at stake in a match, and yet there's no one in the stadium for it. So, like the playoff final last week was odd. It's almost like a number of, very different versions of that.
Yes, yeah. Dan McDonnell, thanks very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Should let you know, latest in the Europa League, still Inter 2-1 up in Bayer Leverkusen. Manchester United now are starting to flirt with danger a little bit. I mean, 65 minutes on the clock, it's still 0-0, and Copenhagen have had their chances and are continuing to have their chances in this second half. United did just hit the post, so it's finally poised with 25 minutes to go in Cologne in the Europa League. We're going to check in with James Horncastle then. So one of the real victims of the weekend was Maurizio Sarri, and suddenly Andrea Pirlo is the Juve manager.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. As potent as Rashford and Fernandes. Post-lockdown. Gamble responsibly. CWE.net.
The Future Proof Podcast.
Of all the scientists I speak to on Future Proof, astronomers have the most enthusiasm. They are enthralled and in love with the universe around this pale blue dot we call Earth. And yet, if like me, you've tried to share in this passion by buying a home telescope and pointing it at the night sky, you may have experienced a little disappointment. True discoveries these days are rarely found with the naked eye. And so what is the life of a modern astronomer today? And where will the next big discovery come from? Find out on Future Proof.
The Future Proof Podcast.
Proudly supported by Science Foundation Ireland.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast now on newstalk.com or on the Newstalk app.
Coming soon, a love story on the open road. Kate's driving her friends to Dublin for the weekend, but her crush Johnny only has eyes for Emma.
Hey Johnny, why don't you sit up front with me and remind me to pay my M50 toll?
No need, Kate. I've got the M50 Quick Pay app.
Thanks, Emma. You're such a good friend.
Forget Me Not, out now. The M50 Quick Pay app lets you prepay your M50 toll and sends you reminders to pay after your journey. Download the M50 Quick Pay app today. Tolling is a vital source of funding for the operation and maintenance of our national roads network.
For more than 20 years, GS Medical has been supporting the healthcare industry. With PPE now becoming part of all our daily lives, GS Medical is continuing to support both the public and SMEs with our medical-grade PPE range. With surgical face masks from 40 cent and face shields from €2.90, we offer medical-grade quality products at exceptional prices. Order direct from our website at gsmedical.ie. GS Medical. Protect those that matter. Terms and conditions apply.
At Specsavers, our stores are now open. So if your hearing or sight isn't quite right, please get in contact. We're doing everything to make sure your safety comes first, from limiting the people in store to disinfecting glasses and test equipment. We'll be wearing protective gear, so if you can't see our friendly faces behind our masks, we promise they're still there.
Specsavers. Open with you in mind. Book an appointment online or call your nearest store.
Has your car insurance increased this year? Stop. Don't pay it until you call Sheridan Insurances. Our friendly team of experts are here to speak to you and understand your needs. We search over 15 insurers to get you the best insurance policy, leaving you more time and money to enjoy the important things in life. Shop local. Call Sheridan Insurances today. Sheridan Insurances Limited is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. We love the beautiful game more than Olivier Giroud loves the near post. Gamble responsibly. CWE.net.
Now, always good to welcome to the show James Horncastle, whose work you can read at The Athletic, and you'll get him on BT Sport as well. He's an expert in Italian football, European football. James, it has been a while. You're very welcome.
Good to be back.
Great to have you back. So let's talk. Juventus have said goodbye to Sarri. Come on in, Andrea Pirlo, who had been named under-23s manager, just 10 days ago. This is quite the promotion for Andrea Pirlo. Juventus took no time getting rid of Sarri and didn't show him much sympathy either. Did he do that bad a job?
Well, he won the league. which is more important to Juventus than fans and media would give them credit for. They still think that every single Scudetto of the last 9, because they've won 9 in a row now, has been difficult in its own way. It's presented different challenges. But if you look at the statistics, they won it by a single point this season. So that's the closest title race since 2002, although it didn't really feel that way because once Juventus won the title, they did seem to relax a little bit. But if you look at the number of defeats that they suffered in the league, 7, which is more than, for example, Antonio Conte's Inter suffered. If you look at their defence, which has been the best in Italy for the last 8 years, they conceded 43 goals, which is the worst defensive record a champion has had since the early 1950s. And their attack was only the 5th best as well. They lost 2 finals, the Super Cup and the Coppa Italia. And they went out of the Champions League in the round of 16 to a very beatable Lyon side. And that was one of the reasons why Maurizio Sarri was dismissed. I think the rest is a general sense of incompatibility with a club with Juventus's DNA, which is one of the reasons why it was such a fascinating appointment in the first place. And of course, with a few players as well, who I think recognised that they weren't suited to the kind of football that Maurizio Sarri wanted to play. And I think that is one of the reasons why the hierarchy at Juventus thought that giving him a second season would be forcing something that wasn't ever really going to work.
Okay, very interesting. So in what regard is he unsuitable to the Juve DNA, and why were certain players unsuitable to Sarri's approach?
So Juventus's motto is winning isn't important, it's the only thing that counts. And they've always been a club that, haven't been, overly impressed with managers who have a certain style. And the style seems to come first, ahead of the substance. That's why they haven't really cared about whether they've won ugly or not. Ultimately, what matters to them is that their name is engraved into the trophy at the end of the season. And I think that's why this was always a kind of countercultural appointment, really, in that with Sarri, it clearly does matter how you win. He likened his Napoli teams to sort of Holland in 1974 and 1978, which reached World Cup finals playing beautiful football, but ultimately didn't win the trophy. And, I think there was that element to it. Also, Sarri has come up literally from the bottom. We're talking Sunday League football. And I think as he's got higher and higher up, sometimes for such an educated and intelligent guy, his comms, his communication strategy has not always been what the hierarchy at certain clubs have wanted to hear and dressing rooms have wanted to hear. For example, at Juventus, after the first leg against Lyon, he basically came out and was very candid in saying, look, my idea is they're not getting through to the players. I think at that stage, it's very difficult to command authority in a dressing room, and likewise with players, like some of the highly technical players who like to dribble. Basically shouting at them 1 touch, 2 touch when they want to take players on and do a few step overs and the like. That's not always what they want to hear either.
Okay, very interesting. Even at Chelsea, for all the brilliance of the football we saw at Napoli, we never really quite saw that manifest at Chelsea. I was quite disappointed in Sarri's Chelsea. At the same time, they finished 3rd. He got Champions League football, the Europa League title. It seemed like a very decent innings, not least compared to what Lampard has done and the effusive praise that so many seem to give him. It wasn't that out of kilter with what Lampard has managed to do this season, Eden Hazard and the transfer ban notwithstanding. And equally at Juve, despite some damning enough stats there, winning a league and then, okay, a blip against an average enough league on side is not great. But if there was a sense at Chelsea or Juve that he was a good fit and he was personable and he was liked, you suspect he might have been kept on for a second season. So there does, you mentioned his communication issues. There is a personality issue with Sarri quite clearly.
Yeah, I mean, there is and there isn't, because I still find him to be a very likable character. And I think one of the reasons why people warm to him is because he is so genuine. But at this level, sometimes it's better to be guarded. It's better to be a bit more diplomatic and not always say what's on your mind. I know that players and directors appreciate honesty, but certain things can be said in a certain way. I think to some extent, because he has got such a specific style and such a well-defined methodology, there is very little room for compromise and change and variation within it. And I think that has perhaps been where, I wouldn't say he's fallen down, because as you mentioned, if you take the temperature of a fan base at Chelsea and Juventus, it doesn't seem to reflect what is down on paper, which is this guy has been successful. He's won things, and yet they're all dissatisfied. And that's the slightly curious thing is that as he's become a winner, he seems to become less popular. And I think it depends on expectation levels at different clubs, and it certainly depends on the standard that he set at Napoli, which I think is unrepeatable in the way that Pep Guardiola is still a very successful manager. His teams still play winning football, but have we seen Bayern Munich and Manchester City play exactly the same way that Barcelona did? No. Did we see Arrigo Sacchi succeed in making another team that wasn't AC Milan play the style of football that he was able to achieve there? No, because ultimately, you don't have the same players, you don't have the same personnel, and I think what we learned from Sarri's last 2 years is he just walked into an environment that was perfect for him in Napoli, with the right personalities, with players with the right characteristics to play his football. And maybe we won't see that replicated again. Doesn't mean he won't be successful, but maybe we just won't see that kind of football that got everybody talking, even outside of Italy, about Maurizio Sarri.
Yeah, okay, very interesting. And so, look, the body wasn't even cold, and they called for Andrea. James, if there's one thing on the show we can appreciate, it is men with above average to exceptional hair. Now, you fall into that bracket, and of course, Andrea Pirlo. Look, this is quite something. So he's been under 23s manager for 10 days. To draw an analogy, then, with Barcelona, there is a sense that Act 3 is waiting with Xavi. From Cruyff to Guardiola, you listen to any of the players talk, and all of them, to a man who played with Xavi, feel like they're almost in a holding pattern. They're counting down the days till Xavi returns, and they can return to just being Barcelona. He's a coach in waiting, and even as a player, as a conductor, it was almost obvious he was a coach potentially in waiting. The way he talked about the game, he was a coach in waiting. Talk about Real Madrid and other teams with almost disdain because they didn't understand football. With Pirlo, for his many attributes, I think of Pirlo and the style and the panache and sitting in the vineyard and the quotes from his autobiography. I've never, in all the talk of Pirlo, got the sense that this guy is a coach in waiting. What's your understanding of how he's perceived in that regard?
Well, if you read his book, there are a number of excerpts from it in which he says he would never want to go into coaching. And so the question is, what's changed? And he spoke at his unveiling a week or so ago about sort of enrolling for his coaching badges more out of curiosity and more out of it's a thing to do with some of my mates rather than anything that was a burning desire that had been there since he was a player. And then he said whilst he was doing the course, something sparked within him. And he hasn't been able to think about anything else since. He went from, wondering which pastel-coloured shirt goes with this wonderfully crafted blazer, or which wine to pair with his pasta, to actually thinking, well, if I were coach of that team, what would I do with that player? Where would I position him? And he says, it's what he does when he started going to sleep at night. So clearly the latent coach within Pirlo has suddenly emerged, and Juventus, from what they've said, have been as they would have said that they were very impressed by the presentation he gave when they were looking to appoint him for the under-23 coach, and think he has the kind of charisma and also the kind of the ideas to be successful. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made this appointment. But I think it's kind of curious that in 3 years of Cristiano being at the club, there have been 3 managers. A club that was once very stable, has been through Allegri, has been through Sarri, and is now on to Pirlo. I think that just reflects kind of the pressure that there is to get that final trophy that they've been looking for so long now, since 1996, the Champions League, over the line. So, whether Pirlo can do a Zidane, whether Pirlo can do a Pep Guardiola, both of whom actually had coaching experience before they took the top jobs at those clubs, remains to be seen.
So do you feel like the appointment of Pirlo, and I accept what you say about him catching the bug and working very hard and making impressive presentations along with his legendary status, the pressure on the club, be it through the board and Ronaldo's presence, to finally win Europe, are we seeing that borne out in almost what is a fairly romantic, illogical appointment, really? Like, this is a slight abandonment of some principles here. I mean, you talked about stability, so that's out the window, and this is a kind of a little bit of a shot to nothing, isn't it? Like this could end in flames. Equally, it could be a genius decision. But I mean, to suggest that the Juventus board have any clue either way is stretching things. I mean, they have no idea what they've signed up for here.
No idea, aside from sort of the 3 years that they spent working with him as a player, and the conversations that they had, and the sense that they were able to form of Pirlo and his football brain at that time. But I tend to agree. At the moment, there's nothing for people like you and me to kind of judge this on until the games start. And it is a curious decision. I think it is, in some respects, coherent with what Juventus have been trying to do over the last 18 months, which is to get younger at board level. They want to get younger at playing level as well. We've already seen Blaise Matuidi leave today. I think there'll be more exits. I think they want to rejuvenate their playing squad. And they want to appeal to a younger audience as well. And I think, ultimately that's not going to be a primary consideration when they choose which manager they want to be running the club, because ultimately they want the managers to be a guarantee of success. But, one of the things that this has done is it's got people excited. It's got people talking about it, because, we are so in the dark about, Pirlo's ability as a manager. Between now and the start of the season in the third week of September, we can kind of project what we think it's going to look like. And, I think that's something that we all enjoy doing. But, if he's unable to be credible and command authority on the training ground and in the dressing room, this could unravel very quickly. I think what Pirlo has in his favour is the strength of Juventus in the last 9 years. People think it's the defence, which is something that needs overhauling at the moment. People think it's the managers that they've had, Conte, Allegri. The reality is the strength is the club. The strength is Agnelli, the identity that he has for that club. The strength is the two directors that flank him, Nedved and Paratici, and I think they'll be very strong in backing him, supporting him, and I think he'll have players in the dressing room likewise. The veterans, Von, Chiellini, and Bonucci, who can help him get a feel for this for this profession. I mean, I know one of the staff that Pirlo has appointed, and very bright guys. Very in tune with what modern football is what we all consume modern football as. So we want tactics, we want advanced, big data. All that is being wrapped up into this. So again, just very much piques my curiosity of what this will look like come game day.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's all very interesting. So it does sound to a degree like Juventus are now playing the modern football game. They are entertainment companies as well. I mean, you sign Ronaldo at 33 and pay him all that money. Yes, it's to have maybe a bit of a tilt in the short term at the Champions League, but it puts you on the map globally. I mean, you get a lot of Instagram followers, you get a lot of Twitter followers, and Pirlo fits into that billing, doesn't it? I mean, this is a very entertaining plot line to have Pirlo back. So it sounds like that's part of their thinking as well, this younger board.
Yeah, no, very much so. And people will scoff at that. But Juventus are acting, and this is what they actually say when you speak to them. They want to become a lifestyle. I don't think there's a better lifestyle footballer or personality in the game than Andrea Pirlo in terms of people, who people would like to be like. But you're absolutely right in terms of, if you look at some of the moves that they've made, how they've changed the crest, or the icon, as they call it, to look more like, say, sort of the thing that you'd see on a luxury fashion brand, or worse, sort of New York Yankees kind of baseball hat that people wear, even though they're not affiliated at all with the New York Yankees. To some of the collaborations that they've had with some of the kits that they've done. So this season they did one with a skateboard brand from London, Palace, and you look at the changes that they've done to the kit, which this year had no stripes on it. They're all about being, they love being disruptors, to use the current buzzword, and that all folds in with the strategy around Cristiano, which is to get eyeballs on Juventus, to get people talking about Juventus, to ensure that Juventus have people's attention on social media, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, and everything. That means an awful lot to them. You only have to look at how they've recently rebranded their website, which isn't a website. If you want to read the PR, it is a digital ecosystem where you can live and follow not the club Juventus, but the brand Juventus. And I think this is, obviously the primary consideration is the brand has to be successful. It has to win things, because people are drawn to successful things. They get on the bandwagon. They are glory hunters. And if Juventus cease to be that, then that appeal will diminish. But, they hope it all marries together, and that, their aspirations to be a lifestyle will actually fall in with their aspirations to win the Champions League as well.
James, a final point then. I was reading your piece in The Athletic, and you were mentioning that Ronaldo, who generally confides in Thierry Marchand from France Football, he published a story relatively recently saying that Ronaldo is, quote, not unhappy in Turin, but he isn't happy either, which is, beautifully put. Aren't we all, James? Aren't we all? So where is Ronaldo's head at? What kind of season has he had? Give us your thoughts on Cristiano.
So on paper, Cristiano's had a good season. He scored 37 goals. I think that's the most prolific season any Juventus player has ever had. In the league, he scored 31 times, which matched the club record. A lot were penalties. But I think in terms of numbers, he'd be fairly proud of what he's done, even though I believe he was disappointed not to win the top scorer thing and become the first player to do that in Serie A, La Liga and the Premier League. But there have been moments of frustration, I think, for him. I mean, we saw that when it was October, November time when Maurizio Sarri substituted him against AC Milan, and he didn't take his place in the dugout next to the other subs. He went straight down the dressing room, straight down the tunnels of the dressing room, showered, and was gone by the time his teammates were coming in for full time. That was because ultimately he was carrying an injury, which was impacting on his performances, but he clearly felt he could play and didn't take too kindly to being substituted. The Ballon d'Or and winning Champions League titles is very, very important to Cristiano still now when he's, 35 or 36. And, he said when he joined Juventus that, he could have gone to China. He could have gone where Xavi is now.
Now, always good to welcome to the show James Horncastle, whose work you can read at The Athletic, and you'll get him on BT Sport as well. He's an expert in Italian football, European football. James, it has been a while. You're very welcome.
Good to be back.
Great to have you back. So, let's talk Juventus.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. As potent as Rashford and Fernandes. Post-lockdown. Gamble responsibly. CWE.net.
At Guaranteed Irish, we believe enterprise is at the heart of thriving communities.
Did you know Gempack Foods have been making baking a piece of cake for the people of Ireland since 1967? Based in Damastown, County Dublin, they've been providing Ireland with gem baking ingredients that are good enough for Granny for over 50 years. Guaranteed Irish welcomes companies that are altogether better choices for our communities. So look out for it. GuaranteedIrish.ie. Altogether better.
Look, it wasn't supposed to end like this. I was going to use you in a cauliflower curry. I had good intentions. I should have bought frozen instead.
Food waste can cost the average Irish family €700 a year, not to mention a lot of guilt. So waste less and buy frozen. Green Isle. Get to the goodness.
At Leia Healthcare, we always want to give our members more. So now you get unrestricted access to a world of benefits that will help you stay healthy. From convenient video calls with a GP to get prescriptions online, to easy access to experts when you finally want to do something about your ropey knee or dodgy back. And if you do need to see someone urgently, our clinics are available for minor injuries, all without you needing to put your hand in your pocket. Let's stay on top of your health, in every way. Leia Healthcare, looking after you always. Insurance provided by Ellipse Insurance Limited, trading as Leia Healthcare. Leia Healthcare Limited, trading as Leia Healthcare, and Leia Life is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Unrestricted benefits are available until the end of August. Fair usage policy applies.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. We love the beautiful game more than Olivier Giroud loves the near post. Gamble responsibly. CWE.net.
Hi, I'm Mick McCarthy, and I'm second generation Irish and very proud of it. We're ready for a bit of verbal sparring, eh? What you got for me this morning? What pile of have you got for me this morning? I answer questions on anything, mate. Religious, politics, health, sexual problems. And if I haven't experienced them, I know somebody who has. So, Some people might think that's 2 points dropped, and I say some people can f*** off. Yeah, but I don't give a flying about and slaughtering. I told you before. Did not. It's like... If anybody's not happy, write to me at goandgetyourselffettled.com. Have you come in the red suit and the white beard today, have I? Shall I come and sit on your lap and ask? Does your father know I'll bet? Sorry, the keeper's a big tart doing that because there's nothing wrong with it. I said, are you the physio? He said, no, I am the head of medicine technique. Oh, and I said to him, how wide's your door? Can you just put physiotherapist on it like everybody else used to do? And like I say, if I've lost any friends, then they're lost, believe me. I am pleased, man. And I'm pleased I came off tonight, and I'm pleased I was angry, and I'm pleased I shed a few tears, and I'm pleased I kicked that coffee pot across the room. And I'm pleased I feel like I do now. Because I know the old feeling's still there. And when that goes, then if that feeling goes, I'll pack it in.
Big Nick. What a man. So we're pretty much done for the Season Football Show. It's available to podcast if you came to any of that late, as is all the show. We had Paul McGinley on earlier on. He was talking about Colin Morikawa's win at the USPGA. We had Rory O'Connor on Monday Night Rugby, and a really good chat as well with the founder of East Belfast GA Club, which has come into existence about 10 weeks ago. Dave McGreevy is the man's name. So all available for you. Just download the new app. Just search OTB Sports in your app store, and you'll get us there, all our content there, news, videos, podcasts, and so on. Stacked show tomorrow, OTBAM coming at you from 7:30 on all our social channels. The lads will be talking to, amongst other people, Eddie Hearn. They will have Ken Doherty talking about the Ronnie O'Sullivan comments the other day, and Andy Mitten as well. And I don't know, will Andy Mitten be in a good mood or a bad mood just yet. It has finished 0-0 in Cologne. Manchester United and Copenhagen have drawn 0-0. That is going to extra time. So, interesting situation there. Inter have beaten Bayer Leverkusen in the other game this evening. And in the FAI Cup, big win for Finn Harps. They have beaten St. Pat's by 1-0 in the first round of the FAI Cup. We are back tomorrow then, 7 o'clock. Kevin Gilban's going to be on the show with Will. We will have Kenneth Egan previewing Eric Donovan's title fight at the weekend. Obviously, he's been working with Eric Donovan of late, and chat about Katie Taylor, Delphine Pursoon, I'm sure, as well. In the meantime, of course, Tom Dunn is on the way. Good luck.